Hi guys, welcome back to another episode. It's your greasy girl Fel, and today we're doing another video in our acne series because you know this is something that I'm super passionate about and I constantly struggle through, and I know that a lot of you guys are also going through like different types of experiences within the acne fam. So what happened was basically for 2.5 months I didn't get my period and I got cystic hormonal acne haunt me all over again. I'm going to talk about how that happened and then how I kind of rebalanced it and reset it back to norm so that, you know, only in the last couple of weeks have I figured it out and my period came again and all my acne kind of disappeared. So that's what we're going to discuss because the mighty has fallen. Even the mighty have fallen. So before we start, I just want to say I am not a medical professional. Everything that I'm sharing with you guys is what I learned through doing a lot of reading, through journals, through listening to medical practitioners from all kind of walks of life. And I just feel like, you know, me being able to share that with you guys will help you on your own journey. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed, please do. And we also have our Beauty Within Inner Circle where we do workshops, we chat about all things acne related, product related. So if you're interested in joining our community, all the details will be in the description. So yes, without further ado, let's recap over the tumultuous 2 months it's been. Okay, so remember how I was saying, like, I finally figured out, you know, my cycle. I made it come every month because before it used to come once every 3 months, and then I kind of learned what my body needed and the triggers so that it regulated itself, right? So I got my period and I got rid of my acne. Okay, so I use this app called Clue. I started tracking my cycle. And so, you know, it was September and then I had it, and then it was October I had it, November I had it, and then boom, all of a sudden in December, it was like a dry month. I was kind of like, I used to live before with, you know, months on end with not getting it. What's 1 month? It's fine. And then came January, also dry. And then I was like, it got kind of halfway into February. I mean, we're on the 20th, we're like basically at the end of February, right? So it was like mid-Feb and I'm like, what the heck? I still haven't got it. And within that time in January, I realized it wasn't really bad, but I started getting a lot of little like bumps on my skin, only towards the bottom chin and jaw area, and then there'd be pustules, and it wasn't that bad until like the end of December to early January that I was like, okay, what are these like lumps and bumps that are forming underneath my skin that aren't rearing its head? And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting cysts again. Like, it was huge. I literally haven't had a cystic pimple, let alone 3, come up on my face for like at least 4 to 5 years before I kind of learned all about the skin, the body, and everything. So I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And on top of that, I started getting a lot more kind of like chest acne where there's like little bumps and pustules, and then my back was also really inflamed. So I know normally the week leading up to my period, I will normally get breakouts on the back and then it goes away when my period comes. But this time it was just like weeks on end that both of them were just kind of like really like pustully. And I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going back to where I was like 5 years ago. And I was just like, wow, no matter how much we know, if we don't live up to, you know, like this lifestyle standard, it will come back and haunt you so easily. So there are a couple of things. Let's talk about my eating habits at the time. So my sister was visiting. She was here since December 28th, basically when my period stopped coming. And every day she was here until February, I was eating out. We were having like Korean fried chicken, we had barbecue, we had pasta. So we were like going all around in New York, and you know how there's like so many restaurants, and when you have people visiting, it's like a different type of stress. Like, I wouldn't call it stressful, but it is stressing on the body. And so all my normal routine was completely thrown off. On top of that, because she's visiting when you have guests, I was eating dessert like every other night. So we would either go out and have like all these cakes. I'll put the photos up, they look delicious. We'd have cake and coffee after dinner, a dinner that's already loaded with carbs and like probably not enough fiber and vegetables. And everything was so flavorful. It was like so delicious and all this, but it really was not good for the body and for the soul, because I actually felt terrible. And it just kind of kept going on a daily basis. And then on the days that we didn't go and have dessert, we would come home and I kicked up like my snacking. So I normally never really snack. I don't like have cravings for chips or chocolates and like little things to bite on. I'm just like not that type of person, because I think I've trained myself to not want those things. And then coffees. Remember how I say I only have one coffee a day, whether that's in the afternoon or in the morning. But when she was here, because we were out and about, I would have at least 2 coffees, sometimes 3 if we were out all day. So that was another thing. My caffeine intake also doubled, and it was like uncomfortable. I was like bloated, and I felt really like even worse because my period, like mentally, I knew my period wasn't here, and I was like, oh my God, my stomach is huge. Like, what do I do? So overall, I think everything just like heightened. So when I think back now, I was like, yes, this was exactly the diet and the way I used to live and eat before I figured out how to change my hormonal acne. And actually, now that I think about it, I felt like I was doing one of those documentaries, like when people go on a binge for 1 month just to see how their body reacts and they like feel terrible at the end of it. That's actually how I felt. I was like, I am a human documentary at this point in time. Blah. So anyway, like on the surface, not only did I like feel bloated and all that, it made it worse because every morning I would look at my skin, I'm like, oh my God, I am dull. And just dullness and texture aside, the pimples were crazy. Like I kept getting these huge like purpley red ones all along my jaw. There was some on my chin, and like I even started getting a little bit on my like forehead temple, and I'm like, okay, this is like too much. After my sister left, I completely shifted everything back into like home cooked meals, reduced the amount of coffee, reduced the caffeine, and my period came. Like it was literally magic. And I'm just like, wow, the body is an amazing place. So I want to talk about why this happened and what's actually going on inside the body, because after this, it sparked another thing in me where I was like, oh my God, how did this work? So if you're also going through cystic acne, it all boils down to one root thing, and it's insulin resistance. So before, I used to just think like, I hear insulin and I just think, oh, like it's related to diabetes, you know? But actually it has everything to do with acne. And I feel like if you guys know about this, it will make your life so much easier to kind of control what you're eating and how it's affecting you, and it will just be life-changing. Why do we eat food? We eat food to get energy, right? So when we eat, we chew it, it goes into our system, into our stomach, into the intestines. The food that we eat gets broken down into glucose, and glucose is also known as blood sugar, and it's the sugar that's traveling in our blood through our blood vessels. And the blood vessels run basically all throughout our body to deliver the food that's turned into blood sugars into energy, and it's spread all throughout the body. So this goes into different cells like our brain cells to give us that like mental energy to do what we need to do. It's all throughout our limbs, and literally like blood vessels are everywhere. That's what food gets converted into and how our body uses it. So that's the first thing to kind of wrap your head around. Blood sugar and glucose, the same thing. So let's say we're eating a lot and we're actually creating a lot of glucose in our system. So in our blood, there's a lot more of these glucose molecules that are coursing through it, right? So we can't have this huge surge of glucose in our blood all the time. So what our bodies do is create something called insulin. And we have these special cells called B cells that react to levels of blood sugar, and they're like, oh my God, there's a lot of blood sugar right now, so let's make some insulin. And then these B cells will then create insulin, which is created from the pancreas. So then insulin is created to kind of rebalance and bring back our blood sugar or glucose levels within a healthy range. And this also works the other way. Let's say we don't eat for a long time, then our blood doesn't have as much glucose in them, and therefore insulin won't be made. So it's kind of like this really intricate balancing act that our bodies naturally do. So that's why when you hear people say like, oh, when you eat simple carbs, it spikes your blood sugar or your glucose levels, it's essentially saying there's a lot more of these sugar glucose molecules in your blood, and therefore your body needs to rebalance it by creating insulin. So hang in there with me. So we have two things, blood sugar and glucose, and we also have insulin, which helps to rebalance it, right? Now, for some people, if you are like I, or if you have symptoms of hormonal acne, there's something that happens in our body and it's called insulin resistance. And this is when the same amount of insulin that we normally create to rebalance the blood sugar is no longer enough to keep that healthy balance, so our body needs to make more of it. For simplicity, for one blood sugar, to rebalance that one blood sugar or glucose, we need one insulin, right? And that keeps us within the healthy range. Insulin resistance is when for that one blood sugar or glucose, we now need 10 insulin because it's now resistant to it. So our pancreas need to create more to balance that one. So while our pancreas are busy creating more and more insulin to try and rebalance our blood sugar and glucose levels, it's also signaling to the brain that it should be creating more androgen or testosterone hormones, which then throws our entire hormonal imbalance way off, which then affects our cycle and our mood, and then it just creates a positive loop. And when I say positive, it's not actually positive, it's because it's a vicious cycle. So when we eat, we now need more insulin, and we need to create more insulin. It keeps signaling to the brain to create more of this hormone that is creating hormonal imbalance because it's imbalanced. There's more of it than necessary, which then feeds into the insulin resistance yet again, and then we're like this. So on one side, that's the hormones part, right? Maybe that's why your period isn't coming and why there's hormonal imbalance. And what does this mean on the skin? So we're now in the situation where our androgen levels are high, our estrogen is low, and when this happens, where your androgen levels are higher, there's a higher level of oil production in our skin, our pores are clogged, and it further limits the production of the right hormones, which leads to breakouts, cystic acne, and all that stuff that we see on the surface of our skin. So that was a summary, right? So we have blood sugar, glucose, we have insulin resistance, which leads to androgens, and so this is just a vicious loop. And I think for a lot of us who have symptoms of cystic acne, hormonal acne, PCOS, this is essentially what's happening behind the body, and it just keeps going. So what can we do about it? So in my previous videos, I was always talking about nutrients and how you kind of biohack it through the foods you eat. This is 100% achievable. Obviously, like I would say, consult your healthcare professional because I'm not one, but I can tell you that it is definitely possible because over the 2.5 months that I didn't get it, after my sister left, I was able to live my life again in the way that I know my body is receptive to. My period came back, right? So it like truly is, if you're listening and seeing the signs and you know what to do about them, then it makes it easier. So I have a few simple tips. Adding fiber into your diet, reducing the amount of sugars, and balancing out when you do have carbs to instill like either protein or healthy fats into it. So I started making like fish and salmon again. I was eating more nuts. I reduced the amount of caffeine. I cut out like majority of the processed sugars. And I think all of that just took everything back down to the norm or the healthy range, and so it broke the cycle. Then your body can kind of recalibrate, it basically resets itself. So the first thing you can do is just add vegetables. As I said in my previous videos, it's not about not having certain foods, it's just about having a healthy balance, because the fiber in vegetables really help the liver, because our liver is basically our body's filter, and it's also the place that's able to get rid of excess hormones. So remember how we were talking about the fact that we're creating too many androgen hormones that's actually creating this imbalance? Our liver is actually able to flush out any excess, but it needs things like fiber. So some things you can start off, you can easily just Google what's high in fiber, but there's things like broccoli, banana, Brussels sprouts, there's kidney beans, chickpeas, like basically all of these things, right? And it's not just they're high in fiber, they have a bunch of other things as well. And you'll tell because you'll be able to do your 2Z quite easily because it's flushing everything out. The second thing you can do is also zinc. Zinc really helps, and you can find that in whole grains and nuts. I wouldn't necessarily say you need to take supplements from it because to me, like, it's always best in its natural form. And anytime, I don't know, you head into the supplements kind of category, I'd rather you talk to like some sort of nutritionalist or like your healthcare person because you might not actually be deficient in it. You just need to boost it up. But honestly, just eat your vegetables. And then third thing is omega fatty acids. So I love salmon, fish, and then avocado. Those are on the top of my mind, the two things that can also really help to rebalance. All the while, you don't even need to think too much about that. Just like find some green things and in your vegetable section, but also just reduce processed sugar. Just be very vigilant on what your triggers are. So obviously I talked about dairy. I just didn't have much dairy. I still had like cheese and stuff, but in terms of milk, it was always oat. I actually have this new one that Rowena gave me and it's almond milk. So we shall, is it? No, pistachio milk. We shall see how that goes. But yes, it was like, I didn't even do anything that drastic, honestly. After, it was just like not eating out and going back to normal, and voila, it came. So I think the sugars were such a huge factor of that because sugar, processed sugar especially, spikes the blood sugar so high, and then you need to release so much insulin to bring it back to the norm. But because in the process of creating that, you're creating more like androgen levels, which creates the insulin resistance. And so I can just see now like what a vicious cycle it was. And I was basically just like suffocating my body in actually being able to create the right hormones to like live healthily. And you can feel it, right? It's not just like seeing it on the skin, but you can feel like you go through certain moods or your energy levels, it like spikes up and then it depletes all the time. Anyway, there's like so much I can get into. The next time we might even just like go through some foods. I'll like show you what you can do or talk about the liver more because it's like so good. But anyway, I just wanted to like share with you guys the main thing of this video really is to hopefully get you to see the cycle in which your body goes through when you're not feeding your skin and your body the right things. And you know, our skin and bodies are the first signs we can see and feel that something's off. So I think it's like worth kind of thinking about and looking more into. I'll leave all the kind of research and the videos that I looked at. There's a few animations that I think are really interesting as well. So I'll leave all that below so you guys can see it as well. And hopefully this was helpful. And I love like having you guys on my journey as well, even if we revert back to not so great things. But I think that's what, you know, life is all about. It's just about going through the journey, ups and downs, learning new things from it each time and feeling a little more empowered and confident every time in being able to, you know, hack it yourself in natural ways. So yes, hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other questions or suggestions on what you want me to talk about in our next acne series, leave them below as well. Give it a thumbs up and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye.